Welcome back, I'm Osman Lone and this is Indus News. Well, we start from Iran, which says it's ready to hold dialogue with Saudi Arabia if the kingdom is willing to do so. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said Iran has never closed the doors to dialogue with its neighbours. Tensions between the Gulf's biggest countries have spiked since Saudi Arabia accused Iran of carrying out attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz in June. Iran has rejected the allegations. Now, in a related development, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says the military alliance has not been requested to launch a mission in the Strait of Hormuz. Stoltenberg made the comments before a meeting with German Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer. The NATO Secretary-General says the alliance members are concerned over the situation in the Gulf. His statement comes after the US asked Germany to help secure the Strait of Hormuz.
NATO allies are concerned about the situation in the Gulf, and freedom of navigation is of course of great importance for all NATO allies. And several NATO allies have already assets in the Gulf, but there has been no request for a NATO mission in the Gulf.
Well, Germany's Vice-Chancellor Olaf Scholz has voiced skepticism about a US request for Berlin to join the Western naval coalition in the Gulf. He said participants in the operation risk being dragged into a conflict with Iran. On Tuesday, the US asked Germany to join France and Britain in a naval mission to secure the Strait of Hormuz for commercial shipping. The request comes after a UK-flagged vessel was seized in the strait by the Iranian forces. Britain earlier detained an Iranian supertanker off the coast of Gibraltar. Now, the US says it hopes to conclude a peace agreement with the Taliban at their next meeting. Wrapping up a visit to Kabul, Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said the United States and Afghan governments have agreed on the next steps in the peace process. He said a negotiating team and technical support group are being finalized. Khalilzad will arrive in Pakistan for talks today before heading to Doha to meet Taliban representatives. "35 people have been killed after a bus hit a roadside bomb in western Afghanistan. The Herat governor's office says 17 others were injured in the explosion on the Herat-Kandahar highway. And this comes a day after the UN expressed grave concern over the deaths of nearly 1,400 civilians this year. The African Union has called for the speedy trial of the killers of 5 school children during protests in Sudan's northern Kordofan state. The head of the ruling military council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, said the killings of the students are unacceptable. Meanwhile, the AU's mediator for Sudan, Hassan Lebat, says the ruling military council and opposition should sign a constitutional declaration. Lebat said the date for the signing will be set after a meeting of a joint legal committee. He also went on to say a power-sharing deal between the military and protest leaders will be reached as soon as possible. President Donald Trump has said the US is going to strike an arms control deal with Russia. In an interview, Trump said neither country needs to add weapons to their arsenals. Earlier, National Security Advisor John Bolton reiterated the US will withdraw from the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty on Friday. He also said the 1994 New START nuclear arms treaty is flawed and unlikely to be renewed. Russia formally pulled out of the INF treaty earlier this month. Yesterday, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Moscow does not intend to reverse its decision. Now, South Korea claims North Korea has conducted 2 more short-range ballistic missile tests off its east coast. The second missile launches in a week come ahead of a joint military drills by South Korean and US forces. South Korean Defense Minister Jong Kyung-do said the missiles were launched from near the port of Wonsan. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said the launches didn't pose any immediate threat to national security. Cabinet Secretary General Yoshida Suga said Tokyo will continue to seek a summit with North Korea despite the tests. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has expressed optimism about the resumption of denuclearization talks with Pyongyang. A South Korean parliamentary delegation has met Japanese politicians in Tokyo in a bid to ease trade tensions between the two countries. The delegation will also meet the Secretary General of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, Toshiro Nakai, during its 2-day visit. The foreign ministers of South Korea and Japan are scheduled to meet in Bangkok on Thursday. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he will encourage his counterparts to end their dispute during meetings of the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Now, staying with America, and China will buy more American agricultural products. This comes after high-level trade talks between the U.S. and China concluded in Shanghai. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham says the talks were constructive and the next round will be held in Washington in September. Meanwhile, China says Washington should show more sincerity and honesty in the trade negotiations. China has pledged to contribute $1 million to Palestine's Gaza Strip food program. This comes amid acute financial crisis in the country after the US cut more than half of its aid. The deal was signed in the West Bank city of Ramallah. The UN is running more than 700 schools and a network of 150 healthcare clinics in the region. Japan has offered to mediate the peaceful repatriation of Rohingya between Bangladesh and Myanmar. Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono made the offer in a meeting with his Bangladeshi counterpart, Dr. Abdul Momen, in Dhaka. Momen said Dhaka will take a decision after internal discussions. The Japanese Foreign Minister will visit Rohingya refugee camps in the Cox's Bazar district. Kono will then leave for Yangon today to discuss the Rohingya with Myanmar's leadership. Myanmar and Bangladesh are in a stalemate over the return of the Rohingya, despite two agreements in November 2017 and January 2018. Ethnic cleansing by Myanmar's military in 2017 forced over 700,000 Rohingya Muslims to flee. In Bulgaria, volunteers are building a ship with reeds to test a theory about ancient Egyptian sailors. The Abora will sail from the Black Sea coast to the Greek islands in the eastern Mediterranean. More in this report.
In Beloslav, Bulgaria, a group of adventurers are wrapping up their work on this ship. The Abora 4 has been built with reeds, and for a reason. They want to show the ancient Egyptians could have built a reed ship and sailed it as far as Georgia in the Caucasus. Led by archaeologist Dominique Gerlitz, the adventurers will sail from the Bulgarian port of Varna through the Bosphorus to the Greek island of Crete. But reeds?
Technology of this boat is in accordance with prehistoric rock drawings from Upper Egypt and also the Caucasus, and we have plenty evidence that the use of papyrus rafts in ancient prehistoric times.
The Abora has been built with 12 tons of reeds and 2 kilometers of rope. It will need 2 weeks to soak. The reeds mean the boat will not crack or sink. A good thing, because the 700 nautical mile voyage to Crete has hazards.
First one is the passage of the Bosporus. In antique times, I guess it was much easier than today because we have counter traffic, and this will be maybe the biggest danger on the sea voyage.
With modern satellite and radio communications kit, some of the 21st century will make it on board.
Tunisia has decided to hold presidential elections on September the 15th. Originally scheduled for November, the vote was brought forward following the death of President Beji Said Essebsi on July 25th. The campaigns are scheduled to run from September 2nd to September 13th, with the results expected 2 days after the polls. Now, if no candidate receives a majority of the vote, a second round will be held in November. Algeria's army has rejected opposition demands for talks to be held to end the country's political crisis before presidential elections. In a televised speech, Army Chief General Ahmed Ghaid Salah said polls were essential to end the political impasse. He warned there was no more time to lose. A commitment has been established by interim President Abdelkader Ben Salah to arrange the presidential vote. But it's made no progress because of opposition pressure to remove colleagues of former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika from power. Thailand has hosted the annual meeting of Southeast Asian foreign ministers. A plenary session kick-started the 52nd ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting amid rising global challenges. In his opening remarks at the session, Thai Foreign Minister Dom Puramdewani said ASEAN is looking forward to strengthening unity. The South China Sea, nuclear talks and security threats are expected to top the agenda for this year's regional forums.
Our leaders highlighted the need for ASEAN to be more forward-looking and to strengthen its unity, to speak as one to be heard. We also adopted a key document, the ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific, that provides a framework for political engagement with nations along the confluence of Indian and Pacific Oceans.
The death toll from a dengue outbreak in Bangladesh has risen to 44 in less than a month. A Health Department report says over 15,000 people have been infected with the mosquito-borne disease this year. The report went on to say nearly 300 people a day were hospitalized in July. Since the year 2000, around 60,000 Bangladeshis have been diagnosed with dengue. More than 300 have died. Indian authorities have recovered the body of coffee baron Vijay Siddhartha from a river in southern India. His disappearance on Monday sparked speculation he was facing intense financial pressure. Siddhartha's Cafe Coffee Day chain has more than 1,600 stores across the country, beating coffee giant Starbucks. He was widely recognized for bringing the coffee shop culture to India, a largely tea-loving country. The recovery of Siddhartha's body unnerved investors, sending stocks plunging 20% to an all-time low of 122.75 rupees. The shares had already slid 20% and hit the lower circuit on Tuesday. 2 people have been killed in Mississippi in the 4th mass shooting to hit the U.S. in 3 days. Police say the shooter opened fire at a Walmart store in South Haven, killing 2 employees. They went on to say the suspect was shot and taken to a local hospital with injuries. The suspect was believed to be a disgruntled worker with a grievance against his employer. Now, this comes hours after a man murdered 3 members of a family at their home in a small Wisconsin town. Earlier, 4 people were shot dead and 12 others wounded at a shooting in a California festival. Now, international diplomacy is a balancing act, but the installment of fluorescent pink seesaws on the US-Mexico border showed it could be child's play. Children and adults from both sides of the divide played on the 3 seesaws set up in New Mexico's Sunland Park. They were installed by Ronald Rail, a professor of architecture at the University of California, to connect both sides. He said the swings recognize actions that happen in one side and have a direct impact on the other. US President Donald Trump has made an anti-immigration crackdown a hallmark of his presidency and his 2020 re-election bid. Now, bacteria has infected millions of olive trees in Italy and could threaten the entire Mediterranean. The country's agricultural scientists are battling to contain the problem. The Italian olive industry has already suffered $1.3 billion in damages this year. More in this report.
Italy is the world's 2nd biggest olive oil exporter after Spain, but the industry has been plagued by a deadly disease since 2013, leaving a trail of dead trees.
The Lecchino and Favolosa varieties are a starting point, not the finish line. We hope, and we're working on it, to find a much bigger number of resistant varieties.
Olive oil producers are depending on agronomists to provide a solution to the problem.
At the end of July, we will inoculate them with the illness. We will contaminate them with the insects that transmit the illness, so we have scientific proof that this plant, this indigenous variety that we could cultivate, doesn't catch the disease and so is immune.
21 million olive trees are already infected, and the bacterium is quickly making its way up north. If scientists can't contain the problem, the Italian economy could be left devastated.
Scientists are close to realizing the dream of a world where keyboards and other physical computer controls would be obsolete. Neurocomputing is now being used to help the physically challenged to experience the virtual world of gaming using their brain. More in this report.
Technology is transforming the world as we know it. In a major breakthrough, Swiss scientists have developed a way of operating computers using human brain signals. Their system allows people with motor function disorders to play computer games only using their thoughts. A simulator uses brain waves as control signals.
The skull is a very good insulator, and of course it protects your brain. That's a good thing, but it also protects the signals that your brain is producing from us who we want to read them. So the next generation technology will somehow find a way around this problem, and that might mean that we are not measuring through the skull anymore, but that we are measuring inside the skull, so that we might implant sensors and electrodes into the brain,
which a computer decodes like any other electrical impulse. An amplifier and a cap with electrodes acts as an interface for the user's brain signals. Scientists say decoding complex brain signals with non-invasive sensors is their biggest challenge. Renowned entrepreneur Elon Musk says the technology has wide-ranging applications.
This I think has tremendous potential, and we hope to have this aspirationally in a human patient before the end of next year. So this is not far.
For now, extensive brain training is required to operate the system.
Trying to improve every day. I'm moving my fingers, my feet all day long just to relax, because I can't really feel them anymore, but in my mind I can still control them, and so I move them all the time actually.
Neuroscientists say the next step could be implanting sensors and electrodes directly into the brain.
Well, we could all use some more brain power, especially around here. Now, Bulgarian singer Smiljana Zarieva has broken a Guinness World Record by having one of the most powerful voices on the planet. A Guinness World Record official says her voice can stay pitch perfect despite going as high as a rock concert or an emergency vehicle siren. Indus News has this report.
The star singer's glass-shattering performances would make her audience tremble. Zarieva says she burst into tears when she received the official Guinness World Record certificate last month.
The moment I saw the monitor reading 113.8 decibels, I was amazed and very happy. And when it was over, I burst with joy.
Keen on Eastern meditation techniques, Zarieva wants to explore the curative effects of sound.
I will use this voice to the benefit of the people to cure.
The singer uses a crystal instrument known for its soothing, relaxing and meditative effects, and a chain of large bells. She says various combinations of sound can cure illnesses.
Each sound corresponds to an energy center in the body and to an organ.
The Bulgarian star singer wants to collaborate with other artists. She has already approached American pop star Madonna.
Now, 3 decades of violence in Somalia has left little future for people, especially young people, but they've managed to find solace in the fashion industry. Locally designed handmade attire has also become a source of employment for many. Indus News has this report.
Somali designer Hawa spends her days dreaming up new creations. From a young age, she has found a creative outlet in fashion, despite her conflict-torn surroundings.
When I began my art studies at school, I quickly found a love for designing clothes. Growing up, I realised that was my passion. I dreamed of being a designer.
Somalia has been ravaged by decades of war, and the Islamic militant group Al-Shabaab stages regular attacks, making life here precarious. Muna, another Somali designer, set her sights on proving that it was possible to inject creativity and hope into daily life.
My priority was to be an inspiration for young Somalis, to show them that it's possible to succeed in their country, that you don't need to leave to do that.
Success means starting a business in the clothing sector, but also offering locally produced fabric to clients. In the capital, Mogadishu, fashion choices are often limited and very costly.
The clothes are often too big. We have to take them to a tailor to be resized. Here it's different. We can choose a design and have a dress in our size, and the price is much lower than imported clothes.
And fashion is not only for women. Some young men are also venturing into the sector, despite the weight of strict traditions that could discourage them.
Welcome back. Now in business news, US President Donald Trump has called on the Federal Reserve to significantly cut the benchmark interest rate. His demand came before the central bank opened its two-day policy meeting. Markets expect the central bank to cut the key lending rate by 25 basis points. It will be the first cut in over a decade amid a slowing global economy as a result of trade uncertainty. Expressing disappointment, President Trump said he would like to see a larger cut of 50 basis points. But a cut of that size is only used when the economy is experiencing a huge slowdown. Earlier, the Federal Reserve Chairman signaled rates could be lowered due to economic uncertainties. Now, Samsung says its profits have plunged 56% in the second quarter of this year. It attributed most of the decline to falling memory chip prices. Samsung posted an operating profit of about $5.5 billion for the 3 months up to June. The results are in line with the company's estimates, but Samsung said the decline reflects a broader slowdown in the industry. Now, this has been also weighed down by the US-China trade war, and it faces more disruptions to its chip business from a growing trade row between Japan. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he will encourage both sides to end their dispute at the ASEAN meeting in Bangkok this week. European stock markets swing between small gains and losses as investors await an interest rate decision from the US Federal Reserve. The pan-European stock 600 hovered around the flat line and slipped 0.6%, but the FTSE lost 4% after Lloyds Bank posted lower than expected earnings for the second quarter. Frankfurt and Paris stock markets also dipped as Eurozone economic growth slowed to 0.2%. What's the weather? Now, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, those were the headlines. Those were the news, sorry. And coming up next are the headlines. Keep me watching Indus News.